Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another episode of my podcast. Today's podcast is called What's More Important? And as usual, I will start this podcast off with a quote. Growth is uncomfortable. You have to embrace the discomfort if you want to expand. And that's a quote by Jonathan Majors. I know we've all had that point. We've all hit that point where a discussion or maybe a talk that you're trying to have with somebody, whether it be a loved one, a friend, a coworker, an employee, where it kind of turns to an argument. You know, what I mean by argument is, all meaningful progress is stalled or it's lost. The ego kicks into overdrive because feelings are hurt. And there's a host of other emotions that are on deck that depend on the type of scenario that just block any type of progression. And when we get into these type of modes, when we experience these type of scenarios or situations, it really kills communication. It kills all type of effective communication, because when you reach that point, you are now operating, again, like I said, off the ego. So maybe you said something, your feelings are hurt, or the other person's feelings are hurt, or you're trying to flex on the other person, or it's just gotten to a point where it's no longer meaningful. And if we want to have effective communication and we want to achieve something or attain something by having this conversation, then we have to learn how to better communicate, how to better approach the person or the situation so that we can achieve the goal. That's why I started off with the quote that I started off with, because when you're growing and when you've experienced growth in certain areas in your life, you learn that, every battle doesn't have to be fought. And sometimes in situations like this, depending on what the setting is and depending on who the person is, you might have to take a L. And a lot of people don't have the experience, the growth, the maturity to just be like, yeah, I'm going to take this L for the betterment of, the situation with the friend, their long-term goals or achievements they want to obtain. But, sometimes we just got to take that L because it's not worth it. And you'll hear me say that again later on in the podcast. No one can make you react a certain way or feel a certain type of way. You are in control of that. Nobody makes you feel angry. Nobody makes you feel sad. Nobody makes you feel less than. That all comes from your internal situation. So if you feel less than, the person didn't make you feel like you were less than. You feel like because of your position or a number of other factors that you've made up in your head that may be real or not real, that you are less than a person that you're in front of right now. They didn't make you feel less than. You made you feel less than. They don't make you feel angry. You make yourself feel angry because you say, well, they said something with disregard for my feelings, or they said something even though I told them not to say it before, or whatever. The variables in this situation are infinite, but the main point that I'm trying to, put forth is that nobody can make you feel any type of way. And I've said that before in previous podcasts, and it remains true to this day, and it'll forever be a constant. Nobody makes you feel any type of way. The way you feel is dependent upon your perspective on the outside world. So whatever perspective you bring into the situation, whatever perspective you gather from the information that you're receiving, that's how you're going to feel. And sometimes it can be as simple as, asking for clarity, like being specific in your questioning instead of just being ambiguous or speaking in general terms. Like if somebody says something that makes you mad, or you feel they're coming at you sideways, whatever, you could be like, so real quick, let me clarify. Or you can just ask a more specific question so that you can get that clarity in the air that either the person meant what you thought they meant, or you had selective hearing and you heard something other than what they were meaning to communicate to you. And either way, it's still based on your perspective, how you feel about what that person says. And ultimately, you determine how you feel and what you feel. In moments like this, we have to ask ourselves, what was the point of it all? Is your aim to win, to be right? Is your goal to reach a common ground? Is your goal to achieve some type of change, some type of meaningful change? Or is your goal to change your minds and educate? A lot of us get into these arguments with people, and we just get in arguments for no reason. We walk away angry, flustered, sad, disappointed. Maybe we even lose a friend based on the argument. Maybe we make ourselves look, stupid because of the argument that we were having in the place we were having it, like having the argument in public. We have to ask ourselves these questions, like before you get hyped up and before you invest energy and emotion and all of this stuff into it. What's the point? What am I gonna gain from this? What's my aim? Is my aim just to be right? Is my aim just to win an argument? Just to save face in front of a bunch of people? You gotta is it worth it? Sometimes you gotta take that L. Sometimes winning the argument is just not worth it. It it's a moot point. Like if you're debating over politics or religion or some type of social issue, everybody's not going to see eye to eye. Us being different is what makes us unique and what makes us beautiful in our own right. So arguing with people trying to swing them over to your side is not always productive, depending on the setting, the scenario, the person, and again a host of other variables that may be included in the situation. Is your goal to reach a common ground? Are you trying to make peace? Are you trying to build a bridge? Are you trying to create something that wasn't there, or something in the past that was destroyed and you're trying to rebuild it? Are you trying to reach a common ground? Again, you got to tailor what you're trying to say to your audience. You got to make sure that you communicate in an effective way so that you can build bridges instead of destroying that common ground that you're trying to achieve. Is your goal to achieve change? Are you trying to speak to the person to get them to change their behavior, change their mindset, change maybe the way they look at things? Again, it takes a very specific and planned out route of communication in order to get this person to change. Because if you offend them, or if any type of block is present, from them hearing your communication or being receptive of what you're trying to say, then trying to achieve change is going to be hard. It's going to be real hard. Look at the great orators in our time, like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi, Marcus Garvey. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. They were trying to achieve some type of change, and they had a big following, but not everybody was on board with what they were saying. Not everybody was a supporter of what they were saying. That's going to happen. Everybody's not going to be for you. Some people are going to be against you just for whatever reason they feel like it's their right to be against you. So don't think you're going to change everyone, because you're not. You can only do what you can with what you have where you're at. And again, is your goal to change minds and educate? Are you an educator? Are you trying to teach people something? Usually this is easier because the audience that's in front of you wants to be there. So they see value in you, who you are, what you do, and the information you're presenting. So if I were to guess, this would be the easier one. Again, there are critics out there that are going to say you don't know what you're talking about, or who's against your theories or your ideas. But again, each one of these different conversation points take a different approach when you're speaking to your audience. And the people that we remember for being great at talking and changing people's minds and gathering great groups of people are aware of this fact, and they tailor their conversation to their audience and to what they're trying to achieve. Start off with the goal in mind. Once you determine what your goal is, you have to tailor your presentation. Every action doesn't deserve a reaction. Pick your battles. Again, it goes over all the stuff that we've just been talking about. Every action doesn't deserve a reaction. Just because somebody does something that makes you feel angry or makes you feel sad or makes you feel less than doesn't mean you have to react to that. Because when we react off of impulse or we react off of emotion, oftentimes that's not good, and we set ourselves up for failure. So we need to be calm, cool, calculated, and realize, our setting, our scenario, and what are we trying to achieve, before we just jump out the window. What's under that window? Is there a floor? What's, hypothetically speaking. But take that time, take that space, take that tactical pause, just take a breath, and before you react, think about what you're doing. Pick your battles. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to give your energy in every scenario, in every situation that you're going to. Like, keep your energy. Keep yourself grounded. Keep yourself grounded. You don't have to be moved and made to be uneasy by every situation that you go into. Again, it's about your perspective about what you're doing and the situation that you're going into. That's going to drive your encounter and your interaction. And again, how much of a leash you keep your ego on. You can just let it run wild, or you can keep it on a tight leash and say, hey, no, we're not about to do this, and dismiss yourself, or just conduct the conversation in a different fashion. Is it really worth it? What will you gain? What will you lose? Again, sometimes you got to take that L, and then other times you might have to stand up for yourself. But what are you going to gain versus what are you going to lose? If your boss says something to you in a group setting, and you stand up, oh, I'm not going to take that disrespect, and you show out in the meeting or whatever, you're probably going to gain some type of reputation for being, a person that doesn't stand for that with your coworkers. But at the same point, you might lose respect with your boss, or you might even lose your job. So was it worth it? You know what I'm saying? Did you obtain anything meaningful from the action that you took? Would it not have been better to take a tactical pause, bite your tongue, and just, take that L? Because every fight is not worth fighting. Everything is not worth giving your energy into. You control your energy. You control your mindset. You control your emotions. You're in control. Ultimately, you are the captain of your ship. You're the master of your fate. So anything that happens to you in your life, no matter how far left or far right it seems, you are the common theme in the life story that you present and that you write. So if anything happens, somehow, some way, you may have influenced it. Again, the exception doesn't beat the rule, but we are largely in control of our lives. Consider your audience. Are they receptive? Are they in a place to mentally or physically be there for that discussion? Do they have the same goals as you? Your audience is very important, because they're ultimately who you're speaking to. And it could be ranging from a conversation between you and a loved one to a presentation you're giving in an auditorium. You can't say certain type of things, statements, ideology with some audiences that you can with others, because they may not be as receptive as you would like. So you have to be cognizant or aware of your audience, of the people you're surrounded by, and the people you're trying to convey a message to. And again, the reason that is impactful is because you want to have effective communication. And when we go back early in the podcast, we said early on, you have to have your mission in mind. So you're in front of all of these people. They came here to see you for a reason. What's your goal for the end of the conversation, the end of the lecture, the end of you and your spouse having, a conversation about something in your relationship or something in the house that's not right? Like, what is the end goal? What do you want to achieve? And always keep that in mind, because I know I've had an experience here lately, which is why I made this episode, where it starts off as a conversation and then it starts to go left, or it starts to go right. And then somebody says something that triggers an emotional response, and now you're going down the rabbit hole, and you're so far away from what you were trying to achieve and the goal you were trying to reach, that now you're just angry at each other, and you just want to go your separate ways and go in your separate space and just leave it. And because that's how I am. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'll get to a point where I'll just go internal and I'll say, fine, screw it. I'll go to the gym, work out, lay it down on the bench, and then I'm good. I ain't gotta talk about it no more. But that's not always productive, because if you walk away from a conversation, especially with a loved one, that issue is not resolved. That goal you're trying to obtain or achieve is still not reached. It's still not obtained. So like just dead in the issue. It might be good if it's getting too emotionally involved or too heated, but ultimately you're gonna have to come back and revisit that because you're in a situation with a loved one. Obviously, you value them. They have a space or a place in your life. You might have built something with them. You all have grown together over a certain amount of years. So it would behoove you to invest in that relationship, which means revisiting issues if necessary in order to reach that goal and to achieve that common ground or that common picture that y'all are trying to achieve in the long run. Growth takes time. You will have bad days. Not every day will be perfect. You will backslide. You will trip up. You will fall short. You're gonna argue and fight over things that aren't necessarily worth arguing and fighting for. That's part of growth. Eventually, if you keep working at it, you keep trying, you'll reach a destination, or you'll reach a point to where you'll be able to do the things that we talk about. That you'll begin a discussion. Excuse me. That you'll begin a discussion with an end state in mind, with a goal in mind. That you'll be receptive of your audience and of the things you'll say. You'll be specific and clear in the statements you make, so there's no room for confusion or ambiguity. So it takes time. We're not going to be perfect. We're not going to just listen to this podcast and then get off and be the perfect orator or conversational type individual. I'm definitely not there. I'm still working on it, and it still takes growth. I could definitely be more clear in the statements that I make. I could be more considerate of opposing viewpoints. I'm from the military. We're real hard-headed. So once we have a certain thing ingrained in our head, it takes a lot of training and a lot of understanding and growth for us to kind of get that out of our head. We're really individuals that were stuck in our ways. So, but it's all good. That's why you got to train. And that brings us to our next point. Train to a standard. Get out of your comfort zone. The comfort zone is where people, places, things, relationships, scenarios, whatever you want to think, go to die. When you get comfortable and you say, oh, this is good enough, you stop striving, you stop searching for more, you stop trying to obtain more. You're building yourself a fortress, and you're never supposed to build a fortress for yourself, because in that fortress you cut yourself off from the rest of the world. Train to a standard. Train to the type of person that you want to be. Train to the set of characteristics or qualities that you want to have. If you want to be a good speaker, if you want to speak to people one day, these are some of the things that you're going to have to master. There's a host of other characteristics and qualities that you're going to have to obtain, but these are some of the foundational aspects of being a great speaker. But you got to train to that standard. If you don't have that standard in mind, if you don't have the standard that every conversation I go into is going to be meaningful, objective, without emotion, based on facts, and it's going to be one where a goal is reached or obtained. That's the standard that you can realistically bring into every characteristic. And we are human, and to be human is to be imperfect. So knowing that, it's not going to go perfect every time. It's not going to go the way you want every time. And you will fall short of the goals that you're trying to set and that you're trying to obtain. But the point is that you try. That in every way, every day, you try to move closer to the you that is optimal, to your higher self, to a person that is grounded, that's present, that doesn't operate through emotion, that's disciplined, that does things because he needs to, he or she needs to, not because they necessarily want to. We're trying to be better individuals. We're trying to be our higher selves, and that's going to take us to places we necessarily don't want to go sometimes. It's going to take us outside of our comfort level. So we just need to be cognizant of these variables, these factors, and stuff like that when we go into conversations and discussions, whether it be with loved ones, student-teacher relationships, employee-boss relationships, or even if you're trying to teach somebody or a group of people in the audience. These are foundational aspects of being a good orator or holding a good and meaningful conversation where you achieve an objective or you reach the goal that you're trying to obtain from the beginning to the end.